When my father called after nearly 8 months of silence, his voice carried a softness I didn't recognize anymore. He said he was getting older, said families shouldn't drift this far apart, said he wanted me home, not forever. Just 2 weeks, he booked the flight himself, which should have warned me. My father had never spent money on sentiment. But people get older, I thought. Sometimes regret arrives late, so I landed in Chicago carrying cautious hope and one overpacked suitcase. My brother picked me up from the airport. No hug, no smile. He barely looked at me before popping the trunk and saying, "Good, you made it." I told myself maybe he was tired. At the house, Dad wasn't waiting at the door. My sister-in-law was pacing in the kitchen, zipping luggage. Two small children were crying in the living room. Open passports sat on the counter, then my brother handed me a diaper bag. "We're heading to Spain tonight," he said. 10 days, maybe 12. I laughed once because surely this was temporary insanity. "I'm sorry, what?" Dad finally appeared, already irritated. "This is family," he said, as though that explained everything. "Your brother and his wife need this break. You work remotely anyway. Just stay here with the kids." No one had asked. No one had even pretended to ask. I looked around the room at packed suitcases, printed itineraries, carefully arranged assumptions. This had been planned. My ticket wasn't an olive branch. It was childcare. My sister-in-law kissed the toddlers dramatically, already halfway out the door. Their schedules are on the fridge. Dad sighed like I was the difficult one. "You always were independent. This shouldn't be a problem." For a moment, old programming kicked in, that familiar paralysis, the one built from years of being told my needs were selfish, and family sacrifice was love. I almost said yes. Instead, I said nothing. Silence has a way of making manipulative people overconfident. They mistook it for obedience. Within 3 hours, they were gone. I fed the children dinner, got them settled, and sat at the kitchen table staring at emergency contacts. Then I called the one person no one expected me to, my brother's ex-wife, the children's legal mother. She answered cautiously, confused at first, then alarmed. "They left the country?" she asked. "With me," I said, "without formal permission, without asking." The pause that followed felt less like shock and more like legal calculation. By morning, she was there with documentation, custody paperwork, and a family attorney on speakerphone. My father was furious. "You're blowing this out of proportion." But something had shifted. For the first time, his anger no longer controlled the room, because authority had entered it. Not emotional authority, actual authority. The attorney made it plain. Unauthorized abandonment under false pretenses carried consequences. Custody violations were serious. International travel became suddenly complicated when legal questions emerged. My brother's European vacation lasted less than 48 hours. Their return flight was frantic, expensive, and immediate. Dad called me disloyal. My brother called me vindictive. My sister-in-law sent paragraphs about betrayal. I didn't respond because betrayal would have been abandoning those children with someone coerced into responsibility. What I did was refuse. When they returned, panic had replaced entitlement. There were emergency meetings, custody revisions, financial penalties. My brother's ex, now fully aware of their recklessness, pursued stricter legal protections. And me? I changed my return ticket. I booked a hotel for my remaining days. Dad didn't understand that part most of all. "You'd really leave like this?" I remember looking at him, really looking at him, and understanding something painful. He had invited me home only in the ways I was useful, so I answered honestly. I was never actually invited. He had no response. That silence felt different from mine. Mine had protected me. His exposed him. I left 3 days later. No dramatic goodbye, no reconciliation, no final explosion. Just distance. My brother lost money, my father lost leverage, and I lost the last illusion that guilt was the same thing as love. Some endings aren't triumphant. Some are quieter. You stop volunteering for exploitation. You stop confusing access with affection. You let systems handle what emotions never could. And somewhere over the Atlantic, on my flight back home, I realized I hadn't returned to reconnect with family. I had returned just long enough to finally understand why I needed boundaries from them.